Well, we have some audience members that are going to ask some questions this evening. I think some people have been gathering some questions. And if the first, I think Lee was going to come up first, and then from there, we can just come up to this microphone here and you can address any member of the panel.
Well, first, I'd like to thank each and every one of you for your commitment to these issues and for your willingness to speak openly and honestly about them here with us tonight. I'm Lee Dukey. I'm the Executive Director of Interact, and we are Wake County's only provider of comprehensive services for victims and survivors of domestic and sexual violence. And we have seen a tripling of the demand for our services just in the last 4 years. We think that's a good thing because we think that we know that people are reaching us who perhaps 4 years ago never would have been able to access our services. And I am so pleased at this awareness campaign. Awareness without action, however, is like a bell without a clapper. And so I would ask each one of you, what is your fondest hope and dream for this awareness campaign? And what should our call to action be tonight?
Anyone?
I'll try
Jump
that.
in, jump in.
You know, I think we've seen in our recent history some situations that have contributed to the domestic violence problem, one of those being the military. And we send young men and women overseas to Afghanistan and Iraq, and they see things they never would have dreamed of seeing, and they experience traumas they would never have dreamed of. And then they come back and we expect them to blend right back into society. And there's so much in their mind that they're still wrestling with, and they find it hard to fit back in many cases. And the wife doesn't understand what's going on, and she tries to react in the proper way, and often it's taken by the husband in the wrong way. So I think that's one example of what we need to do as a society to recognize the danger signals out there. I could carry this one step further and tell you that the peacekeepers in our society that we've been talking about, the police officers, are certainly not immune to domestic violence in their own lives. With the staggered shifts they have, with the violence they see when they go out and answer calls in the public, and then they go home and for some reason they lose a temper and have to lash out at something. What's the most convenient object? It's the person they love the most. And so we need as a society, as I said, to be able to recognize the problems and then search out those helpful agencies that are there now for us to use.
Jennifer?
I guess one of the reasons that I have shared my story so often is because I feel like God doesn't waste a hurt. And that if me sharing my story helps a young woman out there to recognize the red flags if she's in a problem relationship, that it's worth it to me to put myself out there. And I just hope that through this campaign that people will see the signs and that maybe it will prevent them from ever entering into a dangerous relationship or a dangerous situation. And I also hope that people who have been victims will not feel shame from being a victim, that it's not something to be ashamed of, to stand up and say, this happened to me, because it has happened to so many people. And if we would just start talking about it, I think more, this campaign is gonna influence that. I think that it would just make us all so much better to have get that dialogue going.
As a call to action, I would ask and challenge everyone here to pick one business contact and send this campaign information to them tomorrow. Let's take this great conversation, which I spend a lot of times in meetings, and one of the things we always talk about is how do you take this meeting to an action as quickly as possible, or will we have 5 more meetings talking? So let's take this challenge right now and say, if you have a business contact, call them tomorrow. Send them information tomorrow.
Very good point. Thank you. Other questions from the audience?
I want to thank the panel. Y'all are terrific. Everyone's comments were terrific. I want to thank Fox 50 and Capital Broadcasting for making this happen, because this is an extraordinary campaign that's coming together. One of the ways that individuals who are in need of help, we have great resources here. The Coalition, we've got Interact, we've got Harbor, we've got Compass, all of these organizations that are doing great work. How do we encourage individuals, corporations, to support them, the philanthropic dollars that go into these organizations to make them work? Because I know they all work really hard and the resources are limited. We're fortunate to get state dollars to help us support this, but what can we do to ensure that there are the financial resources that are supporting those organizations that are there to support the victims?
Well, let me just mention this. This is something I've talked about a lot with Lee over the past few years. You know, we are fortunate to have state dollars. We are fortunate to have municipal dollars at Interact, but it falls well short of what you might think that the support you would get from your community. It's a public safety issue. It's what you pay your taxes for, is to be safe. And I think a lot of people assume that we may be more funded and fully funded through government channels, and that the private dollars aren't as needed. In fact, you know, 85% of the money that we raise at Interact is from private sources. We could not provide the services to Wake County without that. Okay, so I think perhaps the message needs to revolve around that, is that we really aren't a government-funded organization like maybe we could be. This is a great opportunity for the private sector to bolster what the public sector can do. There's not endless supply of money, as we all know, but carrying that message and letting private funders know that, hey, this is an issue that is important to everybody. It impacts everybody, and we need the support of the private companies and individuals and foundations as much as any organization does.
Thank you, George.
Good evening. My name is Dr. Valerie Ann Johnson, and I direct the Women's Studies program at Bennett College. And as you all were talking, one of the institutions that I haven't heard you talk about, and if you could comment on it, are our religious institutions. What role do you think they have to play in either supporting women and children, women and girls, or persons who are affected by domestic violence? There's support that can be offered, but there are also some efforts to keep people in the situation. So if you could talk a little bit about your ideas on how we can get the religious institutions to be a part of the solution.
Holly, you might have some background on that. I noticed from your bio.
You can go first.
Or John can go first, but
Well, I know the United Methodist Women took this issue up a few years ago, and you're absolutely correct. The faith organizations must be involved. They're an extension of society. And really, I want to go back maybe even to the first question you asked, what do we want to see? What would I, John Gard, like to see? It's quite simply a cultural shift, that we as a society no longer set the bar at a criminal violation of law, that we lower that bar to healthy versus unhealthy relationships. Let's start there, because it is an unhealthy relationship before it enters the criminal justice system. So if you want to eradicate domestic violence, if we want to make change here as the state of North Carolina, we lower the bar. And we make that, or we encourage that cultural shift. We have an opportunity. Again, special thanks to WRL and Fox 50 and those that have spearheaded the Enough campaign, because this is the vehicle for positive change.
I would say, speaking from a Native American perspective, the church, our religion, it's a big part of who we are. And of course, we, from the Bible, says, you know, the family comes together. The family itself is an institution, and that you know, was ordained by God, and that, you know, marriage is supposed to be forever. But we know that things have changed. I'm not sure the way it used to be, but things have changed, and it's not so much as, you know, this institution of marriage has come together and that you stay there. I'll speak also from, you know, my grandmother. She was married, My grandfather was very abusive. He used to do things, he would throw rice on the ceiling and tell her to pick it off. She would try to get in the chair and try to sweep it, and he would kick the chair from under her and just continuously beat her. And in her mind, she had been taught by the Bible, you don't leave, you stay with your husband. This is the way it's supposed to be. So here we turn around. My dad, he made it a point not to be like that. And then here her granddaughter is going through the same situation with a guy that I was engaged to. But in my mind, I never married this individual, but in my mind, I would have never done exactly what my grandmother did, which was stay. So I would say that as times have changed, we have taken that aspect of the Bible that, you know, we believe that marriage is supposed to be forever, and we said, okay, we believe this, but we also believe that it's not right to stay with an individual that hurts you, because love's not supposed to hurt. Where back in you know, Robeson County, it's still like that. There's a lot of people that don't want to talk about it in the church. You know, let's not talk about brother such and such hitting sister such and such. Let's keep that quiet. But I think people are getting more vocal. There's an organization that has just recently been implemented. It's called the 5 Porches of Bethesda, and it's the fivefold ministry. And one part of that is helping abused women and children, and specifically within the church, just so that way there is that voice in the church that says, hey, it doesn't matter what you've been taught, this religious tradition that you've been taught all these years, but that it's not right. So I would say as long as we keep going in that direction, and there are other individuals that speak up and say, you know, hey, I was married, or even, you know, if you weren't married, I was with someone and they hurt me and it wasn't right, and I know God wasn't pleased with that, so I left. I think as long as we keep talking about that people will see it's okay.
So that's some great insight. Thank you. You have some more, Jennifer?
I just wanted to add that several years ago at Interact, we started a group, we call it the Circle of Faith, where we invited members of the faith community to come, and we have quarterly meetings where we talk about these issues, and we talk about how can members of the faith community respond to victims when they come. And one of our biggest things is referrals. So when someone in the congregation comes to their faith leader and says they're having this issue, that they know that they can refer that person to Interact for services, that they're not just sort of flailing around trying to figure out how to help that person, but that we're there to sort of back them up and help them.
Great. Thank you, Jennifer.